Howdy, folks. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn. And today for you, I'm going to have a new TTRPG video because we are going to be diving into the world of Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory. So you better saddle yourselves up because we're going to be discussing some grim dark stuff here. Because I actually want to talk about planets, creating alien planets, making your planets feel alien yet familiar. And it can actually be done fairly simply. A lot of science fiction writers have actually discussed this over the years, including Gene Roddenberry and some other writers as well, just discussing how to make your world, your universe, etc., feel alien, but keep things familiar enough so you don't have to get into deep explanations and stuff like that, and pretty much get people to relate to what they're seeing. But really quickly, before I get into the meat and potatoes of the video, folks, I would like to take time, plug my Patreon page. Great way to give me additional support. But if you can't do Patreon, best way to support the YouTube channel is obviously viewing the videos, liking the videos, leaving comments if you will. And this is actually a great video to leave comments on because I would actually like to hear other ideas out there. And of course, sharing the video around is also a great way to provide a support for my channel. But now let's get into it. How do we create alien worlds but keep things familiar? And realistically, I think the best way to go is kind of the KISS system. And no, folks, I'm not talking about the band. I'm talking about keep it simple, stupid. And a great example of this is actually in Space Marine 2. And actually, I took a few moments here, grabbed some screenshots from Space Marine 2, and giant fungal plant that's almost the size of a tree. Pretty easy description. Maybe I'd describe it as like a brownish mushroom growing out of the ground that's taller than a person. You know, I have no idea what you'd want to call this plant, but that's one thing you can do. It's a very simple description. You keep your descriptions simple. I play more theater of the mind, so I describe a lot of what the players are seeing. And of course, I'm always looking for the most simple descriptions as possible. And when it comes to 40k Wrath and Glory, that can be a little difficult at times. So here we got a giant fungus. Let's move on to the next one. And of course, giant briars or thorns, essentially I would describe it as a very thorny tree branch because of the branches being thicker than what you would typically see with essentially briar bushes here on Earth. And these would grow all over the place essentially in 40K, you have death worlds, and that's essentially where these would grow, or something similar to this. And these can get really huge. This is actually just a small patch I found here within the mission that I was playing for Space Marine 2. And then, of course, you got a huge sunflower. And realistically, that's how I describe it. I describe it as a giant sunflower that's got a glowing, the center glows. And actually the center explodes and releases all kinds of poisonous spores when you shoot them. Or at least I think they're poisonous spores, or they're supposed to be poisonous spores, but whichever way you look at it, it does release, it kind of, when you shoot it, it explodes and it releases spores all over the place. So it could be something interesting to use for your death world. Now, another one I've seen from time to time throughout various fantasy as well as science fiction is some type of strangler vine. These are actually vampire vines from Dungeons and Dragons, and I think these would actually fit really well within a jungle world setting, especially within Warhammer 40k, where essentially everything is out to kill you. This would just be a great addition, and it's a real simple addition, and it's one that people would easily be able to comprehend, as basically it's nothing more than a living vine that you would see here every day on Earth, really. Well, that's if you don't live out in a desert. Besides of desert, what about different colors of sand? Purple sand might be a good one to use because purple sand might indicate some type of special nutrient that is actually in the sand, that it's not a silicone-based sand. And it could actually even be considered as a precious mineral, maybe for building circuit boards or some advanced circuitry, if you will, within the universe of Warhammer 40k. One I've seen in also another one I've seen quite a bit in fantasy as well as science fiction is just generally glowing flowers, flowers that glow in the dark or light up, if you will, kind of like this is. And actually, I think there might be really a flower that does that here on Earth. So, another one of those science fiction tropes that you can easily use, easily describe. You don't have to get wild with this kind of stuff. Another one I've seen too, and I believe this is also another 40K trope to think about, is actually essentially man eating fly traps. Just huge Venus fly traps that can easily eat a person. I think this is another one from the Kachikin jungle world, if you will, or death world. Um, so it's another great option to use. And of course, you could use something like this on various worlds, a highly evolved carnivorous plant. And once again, easy to comprehend because we have Venus flytraps here on Earth. So I don't know, take its scale and scale it up about 100 times. Another one I see that would another thing that you can do, and I've seen this both in fantasy and science fiction, is actually essentially oversized wildlife. Just basically, like this here, I just describe it as a grayish colored lobster with spots. And basically, I'd go into the size of it just being ginormous, about the size of a sedan. And of course, this one's sitting on top of a rock, so maybe he's a rock lobster. Moving on. Of course, then you have the Ketchikan devil here. And this one's really interesting, and I still would say this one's actually pretty easy to describe as it's really just a giant centipede with pincer-like claws like a scorpion and a scorpion tail. So, once again, easy to describe, easy for people to comprehend, and it's actually a pretty good image of what the writers over the years has depicted as a Ketchikan devil. And then there's also even the Ketchikan barking frog, which is literally what it sounds like. It's a barking frog. It's a huge barking frog, much bigger than our bullfrogs, probably closer to like the size of a giant tortoise, if you will, for size. But it's definitely another thing that you can work with. Make your wildlife feel a bit more alien, that they give off different sounds than you would expect. Maybe they have, a larger than normal size. Maybe they have different types of coloring. As you can see here, this frog is kind of a reddish orange, but you could easily say, oh, well, the frog is purple or whatever. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Another one, too, that kind of sucks is a giant mosquito. And yeah, I've seen those in science fiction as well. There's also the giant mantis, giant ants, giant, wasp, just giant, like every insect that you kind of don't really want to be around when it's that size. And this would be great for essentially another type of death world, even Ketchikan itself, if you will. Now, and then, of course, we don't even have to really get extremely alien either to see some type of alien wildlife that we could have on our worlds. This is actually a real animal here on Earth. And it's weird because it does look kind of alien. This is a muntjac deer, or also known as a barking deer, because they actually bark. They almost make a barking sound when they make noise. But essentially, what they have is they actually have a series of glands, scent glands, around their eyes, right there in front of their eyes, and then they have some on their forehead as well. And actually, those scent glands can be expanded, and it makes the deer even look even more alien. So you could easily implement something like this, and it's just, it's easy to find. Essentially, you could even give your characters, your players, a photograph of it, and they would probably believe that it's really an alien. Another one we can look at is multiple suns and multiple moons, and we even have that here in our solar system as it is. But this is actually supposed to be the twin suns of Tatooine, which is one reason why Tatooine is a desert, pretty much getting scorched all the time by these two nasty suns. But multiple moons is another one that can make a world feel alien to what we would normally experience. And we really have to look no further than Saturn itself, as Saturn has actually, I think Saturn has 5 moons, if I remember correctly. Could be wrong on that one, but it does have more moons than Earth does, as Earth only has 1 moon. We're actually kind of an oddball on that one. My understanding is more planets actually has multiple moons than not, but or more than you would expect. But and another thing too, while looking at Saturn, is we can actually look at the rains of the planet itself. Planetary rains can give a different feel to what a world is like. And actually, scientists even say that Earth once had rains around it. I don't know how true that is, but take it with a grain of salt, if you will. I haven't looked at essentially the research papers that documents why scientists believe there used to be rains around Earth. And then, of course, with all that being said, I haven't even messed with gravity yet. You can get into messing with gravity, making gravity higher, gravity lower, different types of things of that nature, or roughly the same as Earth. And also, that could cause kind of different kinds of issues when it comes to maneuvering around on a planet's surface, or even fighting on the planet's surface, especially if the gravity's heavier. It'd be harder for your characters to move around, especially move around quickly, which can make a huge difference, especially in melee combat, folks. But anyway, that's just a few ideas that you can take and implement to your Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory game to make your worlds feel more alien, and while keeping it simple. And if folks, if you have any ideas you want to share with the crowd that's going to watch these videos, I would definitely love to hear them, because we can definitely feed off of each other and expand on different types of ideas that we can use to make our worlds feel more alien. But anyway, folks, I'm going to wrap up today's video at that. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourself a wonderful day.